Hi everyone, welcome back to Watercolour Landscapes Made Easy. Well, it's another studio painting today, and it's a tonal value study. This video is all about learning tonal values when you come to painting watercolour. When you paint with colour, it's not only the colour you use, it's the tone of that colour, whether it's light, medium or dark. They are the areas that give shape and form to a subject. The subject today is Flatford Mill. It's the back end of Flatford Mill. We've got some lovely subjects down at Flatford Mill, but I particularly like this reverse image because we've got some water reflection, we've got good tonal qualities or changes of tone within the paint, the picture, and good tonal qualities of change within the greenery as well. So let's have a look a little bit closer at the subject. We've got the building here, a good tonal change there. Those shadows are probably the darker shadows of any of the shadows within the subject. The greenery has got good change of tone, but of course even the lighter tones of green are darker than the building, and the same this side. So really the darker areas are the shadow parts of the building, and the real light areas are the building, and that is mirrored in many ways within the water. But if you look very closely, the very light wall is slightly darker in the water, and if you look closely, the darker shadow side is slightly lighter. And I always say water is a great leveler of tone. So you don't want a complete mirror image in the water. What you require is a leveling of tone, but you also require reasonable rippling, as you can see. That way you've not got a complete mirror image, and indeed it wouldn't be, because the reflection in the water is not what we can see across the water. It's what you would see if you was in a boat actually in the water looking up to the building. So, you know, there's a little bit there, but it's all about observation. Well, the very first thing we do is to look at our subject, decide where the building is going to be positioned. Well, the positioning of this building is pretty much central, and I would say the corner, I'm not going to put too much sky in this, the corner of the building is pretty much central there. And the height of that will depend. You've got to leave enough for water and leave enough for sky, but generally pretty much central, perhaps a touch over to the right, but we'll see how we go. Then coming back from that, slightly heading down towards the trees is the gutter line. Then the back of the building, well, let's get this building in here first. So we've got a little bit of area there before we get the side of the building, and the width of that is not dissimilar to the width of where the first tree will be, so it's fairly wide. So that's the other corner, and then of course the apex of the roof is pretty much central, and it's got quite a slope to it. Bring that a little bit further over. Well, right, now we can take this back to the back of the roof, and it's not a great, and that angle needs to mirror that. Then we come down to the back edge. There we are. So we can see a bit of that. We can see the front. We can also have a bit of the side. So consequently, we need to see the side of this. And it's got to be of a similar sort of angle. Now that roof is not quite that high, so I'm going to come up to there, and I'm going to come back down to there. Got to remember that that has to be the centre of the uprights. Now I'm going to put that upright there, so let's just pull that back a touch. You can make adjustments as you draw, and it's the freedom of the drawing that gives you the fresh looking painting. A lot of people say to me, how do I loosen up my work? Well, the answer to that is pretty much with your drawing, really. You know, notice the angle of that too. That's quite a steep angle. Then we got the gable end coming back there, and that heads towards us at that angle, and we do then have a small amount there, so that comes at that sort of angle a bit more. Okay, now we put the gable end there. That's a big old gable on this roof, which is quite important, and that actually sits, so that comes down there like that. There we are. Notice how I'm being fairly loose with this drawing. Oh, that has to come down. Got to be a bit of an angle there, because we've got an angle there. That angle has to be very similar. And drawn it a little bit out, but that's not a problem. Then we come across there like that. Brilliant. It's all looking good. Now this comes across into that area there. Then we need the height of that over the top. That's the old wheelhouse, that is. So that's the bridge of the wheelhouse. Then you've got an area there that goes to a sluice gate that allows the water to go in and out, either through the wheelhouse or away if you don't want water in turning the wheel. So Flatford Mill is a lovely subject. So many really good, interesting features. Now we're going to put that greenery in. A lot of that is, it is summer scene, so, but it's more of an ivy, I think, there, or shrubbery of some sort. And then we follow the line of the water, comes towards us a little bit, so it's a little bit of a slope down. Then we have a large tree, and that's quite dark coming in that side. We have some smaller trees coming in there. Notice how I'm just playing around with the drawing. You know, it's nice and free and easy, nothing too specific at this stage. Then that comes down and it meets a roof somewhere about there. And you won't see a great deal of this. And that then heads to there. That's it. Could come down a little bit further than that, but we're not too worried. And then we've got trees coming out this side as well. Look at that. Now come the windows. Well, we have one there. Size of the windows are quite important. Not very big. Not greatly. Not a great size window. I think that one's a little larger. We do just about see another one there. Whether that will be visible in the end, I'm not sure. And then we've got a couple of dormers that sit more or less under that and under that. So only small too. You know, it's the size of these windows that that really give us the feature of this lovely old building. Used to teach there a few years ago at Flatford Mill, and really enjoyed being in Constable country. Actually, that's actually drawn wrong while I'm talking. There we are in Constable country, which is our famous artist here in the UK, John Constable. It was his father's mill, and apparently he wasn't very interested in taking over the mill or even helping run it. So all he wanted to do was paint, which is also very good, but of course you've still got to make a living. Well, he was lucky in as much as his father actually sent him to London and paid for him, which was very kind of him, of course, to another window there, to study art with one of the top artists of their day. So that was always interesting to remember, that he did have quite a bit of support, but he had the desire, and he had the ability, I suppose you can say, but also, you know, it's all about dedication. You know, art, drawing and painting doesn't come overnight, no matter how well or how much you enjoy painting. Right, now I can see there's a window there. I'm going to put that in because I know it's there, because I've slept in that room above when I was tutoring there, so I do know that's there. And well, we have another window there, but we're not too worried. We're looking at tone values. I think, to be honest with you, that is all you need for the drawing of the building. Well, here we go with the tonal painting. I intend to use mainly this number, what is it? I'm not sure of the number, but it's a Daler Rowney mop brush, as you can see. I think it's a number 4. A synthetic mop brush that points. And I'm also going to use a Pro Arty number 8 that points. So those are the only 2 brushes that you need for this exercise. And of course you do need a jar of water. Well, here we go then. First thing I'm going to do is to paint in the sky. So the sky is relatively light, so I need a light tone of my grey. So I damp the brush in water. Now I'm only using Payne's Grey today, and I only want to start off with a very light tone, plenty of water. Notice how I'm adding lots of water, because the more water you add to a colour, although grey isn't a colour, of course, it's actually a mix of all the colours. So any grey that you've got, I prefer Payne's Grey by Winsor & Newton, but that's my preference. Plenty of water, so I've got a nice puddle. Now there is a small cloud, so I'm going to leave an area there untouched, just adding a little bit more water to that. But other than that, that's just that pure Payne's Grey wash, because that is the tone value of the sky. There we are. And I'm going to have a small cloud just there too. Just a little hint at a cloud. Picking around the building, you don't have to, because it's a lighter tone. You could go over, because this is a lighter tone than what the colour will be at the end. But there we are. So we've got a cloud there which is white and a couple of little clouds there, so that's my very light grey. Now it doesn't look that light, but with watercolour, as it dries, the tones get lighter. Just add a little bit more colour to it, a little bit more water, a little bit more colour. I'm going to paint in the water, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to paint right the way across, because if you remember, I said the water is a great leveller of tone. So consequently, before we put any tone on, I'm going to paint across the water like that to give a sense of movement in the water. So I'm leaving one or two lighter patches here and there, but basically, and I've painted right the way across because water lays flat. Now the next tone I require is sort of a medium tone, so a little darker than the sky. So into that puddle I've added a little more paint, not too much. It's a medium tone. This is where I'm going to use a maul stick just to hold the brush, to help me hold the brush. I'm going to add a little bit more water to that. It's all a matter of tonal values. Now if you notice, that's flipped up into the sky, but I'm not worried about that. It's still a little on the damp side, so that'll lay quite nicely at that angle, across like that. And I'm leaving a gap where, notice that area there where the greenery will come in. So that's a medium tone. That is facing at the same angle, so that will be a similar tone. And that is also facing at the same angle, so that's going to be a similar tone. It's all about tone values. Really fun doing this sort of thing, really. Learns you a lot about the tone of the subject you're actually painting. Really is vital to get your head around that sort of thing. Notice I'm not painting into that where that greenery is. Could do, but I'm not going to. And all of a sudden you've got the roofing coming along there like that. Another area of this tone is there, so that's going in. I love working in tone. Sort of thing you could do if you're out sketching. You haven't got the time to paint a full-blown picture, but you've just got enough time to put down a tone study. Achieve that, I need to add more water, and I'm pulling that up so it's very much lighter. Notice this, I've not even moved away from that first part of the palette. I'm remixing into that. That's the sort of thing you do when you paint. Now the front of the building is, I say, a little lighter. So we paint around the windows because they're white framed. But other than that, that's a little lighter. There we are. Paint around the windows. So that's the front there. The front of that part of the building. These are the real sunlit areas. And I'm actually going to paint down over the posts at this stage, because that will be somewhat darker. Oh, and there's another area of medium tone. Pick up a little bit more colour there, a bit more tone there, because that's also in sunlight. That's it. That's that, more or less that gable end really, to that part of the building. It's a lovely old building. Now at the moment, it's amazing this, because at the moment it looks as if the sun is coming from the left, because you've got the right hand side of the building and facing us are in a darker tone, but we need to reverse that, and to do that we don't add any more water, but we add more paint. This is where you learn the density of mix required, you know, and if you can get the density of mix required first time in an area when you're watercolour painting, always achieve a fresher looking painting really. Because I've added more paint, no more water, look at the colour of that, look. Or the tone, not colour, the tone. Look how really dark that is. There we are. I'm going to paint around the windows at this stage. There we go. Down the gable end like that. So this is the shadow area of the gable end. And there is a window there. There's actual fact, there's a door there too. But yeah, let's show it, shall we? There we are. And what else have we got? Oh, we've got another gable end there. That's also in shadow. It's all about form and shape. Tone. That's what I'm trying to put over to you, that it's not a bit of an overhang, but other than that, that comes right the way down. Like that. That goes right the way down the back. In actual fact, you can't see that, but I'm putting it in anyway. That's it. Now we've got that roof line. That's also in dark shadow. And that area there is also in dark shadow. There we are. All of a sudden, we are achieving a sense of sunlight. There. Sunlight coming from the right now, all of a sudden. It was coming from the left, but now it's coming from the right. And we have another area there. Could be slightly different tone, but now what I'm going to do, this is a good thing about tone values when you come to paint like this. I'm actually painting around that fencing. So that bit of fencing, I'm trying to maintain mostly white. And then I'll show you when it goes into the sunlit area, I'm going to make it look rather dark. And I'm not being too fussy with this. Here we are, so we can begin to see the start of the fence. And to finish that fence off, where it breaks into the light, I'm putting it in dark. And that's an old Roland Hilda trick. Lights against darks, darks against lights. There we are. Dark against a light, light against dark. Now the mix for the trees and shrubs either side of the main building. Now I'm removing a lot of the colour from the brush, and this is quite a light tone, and I'm going to quickly stroke this in. There's a tree there, quite dark against the light sky or cloud, and I'm just stroking that in like that, leaving the little tips just unpainted and one or two areas there unpainted. Now I'm going to go into the darker tone that I've got in the palette, and I'm going to drop that in there and there, and all of a sudden you begin to get tonal changes. There's a darker area there, quite considerably darker. That is also considerably darker on the overhang. So we're getting shape within our greenery now, form and shape. And as it comes down, it sort of hangs down like that. And it hangs dark into that light area there. Now I'm going to add a little more water, taking some paint off of the brush, because I want a lighter tone now into that area. Just use the point of the brush to get the tonal contrast correct, and paint that in. Try and work fairly quickly, because it gives you an opportunity then to go in now extremely dark. So plenty of paint, very little water, and we have a clump there of very dark tone. We have a little area there. Oh, that's very dark, that area, because it's overhung by that area there. And the lower we get near the water, the darker it gets. We've got a real dark tone here against the water's edge, and that sends up through there. This begins to come into sunlight a little along there, but basically this is quite dark. I have left one or two little lighter areas here and there just to reflect the light, but overall quite dark. Now I'm going to paint in the left hand side, weakening the colour again, starting off with a weaker colour to start with, using the point of the brush this time. Just to ring the changes in tone as well, and that spreads out over, it's hanging over that there. This over the distant building, this side is a little bit nearer to us, so we can begin to show the hint of perhaps an impression of leaf work overhanging that building there. And that is white, so we've got shadow to come over that, but other than that, that's fairly white. Then that lays there like that, and more or less lays into that sort of position. Now use the point of the brush just to get the overhang there. Now we go into the real dark stuff again, because there are some dark areas, although this basically is in sunlight, really, in sunlight. But of course there's always overhanging branches and bits and bobs that have tone to them, otherwise you've not got form. There we are. And that's the left hand side. It's a bank to an island there, actually. That's what that is. Now that roof doesn't want to be as dark as the shadows, but it wants to be darker than the frontage tone. So all I'm going to do, add a bit more water to the mix I've already got. Try and pick up a medium tone there. There we go. I think that's probably about right. It should be darker than the frontage, but not as dark as the shadow. Otherwise you wouldn't see it. So that's what I should say is dark, medium, light. There's a couple of other areas of very dark tone that I can still get in with the point of this brush. That's under that little gantry area there, where the water flows towards the mill wheel itself. But of course, as you come down, you then get the reflection of that in the water that is quite ripply. So we've got to show that. So that is the reflection of that in the water. And that is considerably, there we are, look at that. See the way you can see the rippling in that water? Purely by doing that. So we've got the ripples, and then underneath goes the water. Take that up just a tone higher because it's not as wide as that. Nice to have a little bit of width to that. There we go. Oh, and there's also that part of that turns back there, like that. Part of the wall turns back towards, there's a little weir there that can be adjusted, and then of course that has its own reflection too, like that. So that's the start of the water reflection. And just before we finish, since we've got the right amount of paint on the brush, hopefully, I'm going to drag down, because coming over that weir is some water that will, there again, have a limited amount of reflection there too. There we go. I'm now changing to my number 8 Pro Art brush that points, because I'm going to paint in windows and some little additional details and shadows. Now I'm just painting in a shadow there, and a shadow there. There again leaving the white of the railings that are standing in front of the shadow. Then we go dark again with the railings where they come into light. And that's all really you need. Perfect. So we've got dark against light, light against dark, dark against light. Now finally we come to the water reflection. Now I'm not going to be as dark now, so although that gable end is extremely dark, the reflection won't be quite as dark as that, and I'm also creating rippling with that. That is also in shadow there, so that would give a rippled shadow effect. Don't want too many ripples in the distance, more as you come forward. And of course then you get the rippling of that roof that tapers like that. We've got a little bit, now we just go a little bit lighter now with this to get the rippling effect of that area. Like that. That's light against dark, dark against light. Now we're quite dark along the edge there. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to draw the brush out and lift off, because that gives us that rippled effect on the outside edge. And in actual fact, the more ripples you show, the rougher the water. Well, I'm not going to go too rough, but I think that probably works quite well. Also going to do a similar version this side, from the overhang of that tree there. Not too many ripples to start. A bit more water on the brush, a bit more paint. Then all of a sudden that opens up as well into ripples. Tonal values are always important if you're creating a study of any scene really. Then going to be very much lighter now for the front of the building, which is there. So we're going to be very much lighter with this, because that is considerably lighter, and so is that. There. That's dark, sorry. So that's a little bit lighter. That's quite dark there again. Let's pick up a little bit darker area there, that's it. And that comes to a point as well, like that. And then the roof, just a little bit darker for the reflection of this roof. Plenty of ripples, a little bit darker for the reflection of that. Not certain that we should see much of that roof, so just a little bit like that. And then finally pick up a little darker paint to put in any windows that we may see. We do see, and you've got to remember that reflections are directly underneath. They're not at an angle, they reflect directly underneath. Now that window we probably wouldn't see, because looking from the water upwards you wouldn't see, but you'd see that window above, and that I would suggest would be somewhere there. That one we may just see as well, like that. We would see that window there reflected, and notice how I'm not actually painting each glazed area. I'm giving an impression of the windows reflected in the water. We do have a window there, so we may as well pop that in as well, like that. It's all suggestive. Now my favourite thing is the finishing touches. You will hear that an awful lot when you watch my YouTube channel, but they are very, very important. And this is very dark paint. So just under the gutter there, so it's not necessarily the shadow, it's the gutter itself, and along this water's edge you may just see some real dark stuff, just to give a sense of where the water line starts, or the bank finishes. We may see one or two little touches there on the overhang, there possibly, one or two there, and one or two there. Don't put too many of these little finishing touches, but you know me, I do love finishing touches. Now that, we've not put the shadow on that yet, so there's the shadow on the side of that window, dormer, there like that. Nice. And another one there like that. There we go. Just casting onto the roof. Oh, and of course this one has, can't see the side of that one, but you can see the shadow it's cast, or it casts, is down there like that. And all of a sudden that stands away. Amazing, this watercolour business. Down there. Oh, and at the peaks of these roof lines sometimes appear slightly darker. And just down that back edge there. Like that. Quite often they are a little darker. And the overhang there. But other than that, I think we're pretty much getting there, really. Just show up a little bit of the gable end there, just to sharpen that up, and the point there, a little bit down that gable there, a little bit down that gable there. Now all I need to do is to remove the tape like that, and see, it puts a nice edge around it. We'll see what we've got before we sign it and finish perhaps a couple of birds in the sky. Well, there you are. The surround has been taken away. We've got all the tone values that we require now to paint a watercolour of this particular subject. And next month, the 1st of February, I will be showing you how to paint this subject using this tonal version as a guide to our tone values. But just before we finish, just going to sign it, because I always recommend you always sign your work. Whoever you are, always sign it. Try and sign it with the brush and the paint you've used. And that's not always easy, but I feel it becomes more authentic. There we are, Colinsteedart. Pull that through there, and make that go like that. There we are. And just before we finish, a couple of birds in the sky. My old favourite. Where are we going to put them? I'm putting one there, and another small one there. There we are. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching that, because as a exercise I think it's very, very useful, in as much as we can see the colours, of course, we can see the tones, but we've got to relate those to what we put onto the paper. So consequently, if you've got a dark tone there, it has to be dark there. The colour is important, but unless you get it dark enough, you'll never see the sense of light onto the sunlit area. Same here, and you notice we've got light sky, medium, dark shadows. So you've got light, medium and dark. All the way through this picture, it's light, mediums and darks. And that is how it is in black and white. If that were to be a black and white photograph, then it would show that up. Now you could say, well, why don't we just turn that into a black and white photograph on the computer? Well, I do that, but we're learning to mix tones while we produce them. So hopefully when you come to mix your colours, you've already done another step towards getting those tone values right, because you're actually using the brush to achieve. You're not worried with this exercise. We're not concerned with the colour, it's just purely the tone. Once you learn tone, then you can then start mixing your colours to suit the tone that we have in the study. So I hope you've enjoyed that. If you have, as always, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And Watercolour Landscapes Made Easy will be back again on the first Friday in February. And enjoy painting. Thank you very much for watching.